Hello, friends. Are you ready to hear the rest of the tale? Then let us commence. If you'll remember last time, the Ragtags had gone with the Tabaxi answers to find his brother, the Sealy Court operative Jewel, at his bolt hole in the forests around Sylvania. While they didn't find Jewel, they did uncover his reconnaissance journal, and with it, several leads about the goings-on in, around and behind the scenes, and perhaps beyond, the outland gate town to the Feywild. Suddenly a gas grenade rolled into the bolt hole, releasing a noxious yellow gas, and the heroes were soon fighting for their lives in the forest against a gang of Fey creatures that included several shadows, darklings, meanlocks, and a nasty raging redcap. After being grievously wounded, Answers ran off into the night with some of the enemies pursuing. With that, the Ragtags were able to turn the tide, routing the rest of the assassins. Returning to the Trio Life Inn, the heroes got a room and spent a miserable night tending to their wounds and resting. The next morning, Brace discovered a note had been hidden in some fruit in the breakfast. It was from Answers, who, they found out, had escaped to the crystalline temple of Avandor in town, and was hiding there currently. He invited the heroes to meet him there. Before heading out to the temple, Varys decided that he would ask a question of his magical piece of auguring parchment, Ceridin's snarky scrap. The magic item would enigmatically and snarkily answer questions about your current quest. Varys decided to ask the scrap, how can we know the identity of or find the ghost thief who stole the solar egg? And the scrap answered thusly.
Identity? That's rich coming from you, love. Perhaps you should try looking in the mirror or some other device first. If only solving mysteries were as simple as asking a trinket like me. But alas, to find the ghostly thief, you'll need more than just a dashing piece of magic parchment and a charming disposition. Is this ghostly thief another twist in your already convoluted fate? Or is she another distraction? The answer, of course, is yes. Yes, as in yes, uncovering the identity of this spectral pawn could lead you to the shadowy puppeteers pulling your strings. But also, no. And be warned, in the shadows of puppet masters, truth is elusive and as multitude as the planes themselves. How utterly cliché, yes? But fear not, dear seeker, for in this tangled mess of fate and folly, clarity is but a distant dream. Embrace the chaos, for only then may you uncover the truth, or stumble into yet another deliciously perplexing conundrum. And isn't that what this is all about?
With that, the scrap finished its divination, or whatever that was. With Varys feeling very frustrated and super perplexed, and yet still skin-crawlingly curious, the heroes headed out into Sylvania. After resupplying and rearming in town, the Ragtags made their way to the stunning wonder that is the Crystalline Temple. They were greeted warmly by a friendly elven cleric and a gently stoic archer guard. From there, they were escorted into the wondrous temple to meet with Cleanna, the head priestess at the temple. Welcoming the Ragtags warmly, Cleanna thanked them for helping her friend Answers. The priestess led the heroes to a secret chamber in the crystal walls of the temple, and then to a pocket dimension hidden in the secret chamber. It was there that they found Answers. The tabaxi, not the reaction or response to a question. Although they actually got a few of those from Answers too, as he had learned where Jewel had run off to. And as a bonus, he had also learned what had happened to that enigmatic Fey book, the Liber Lunae Infinitus, as well. Okay, I'm pretty good at picking up on synchronicities and supernatural subtleties and whatnot, so I have to say I really think that book is going to be important to how things shake out at some point, you know? Just putting that out there, yeah? Answers had learned from Cleanna that Jewel had taken refuge at the Crystalline Temple a few days earlier. This was after the Sealy operative had located the stolen book. Turns out, the criminal element in town, a gang run by a hag named Mama Ethel, had stolen the book from the Law Spire. Why they did was unclear, but Jewel had figured it out and stolen it from them somehow and then hid at the temple. And if you're keeping track, that's the same gang that Becco Beck and his scarecrows are a part of, so yeah, they're a nasty bunch indeed. After this, something he read in the book had made Jewel run off to the widow's henge. You know, that haunted henge outside town where people had been mysteriously disappearing from. Ring any bells? Knowing this, Answers wanted to go to the henge and find out what happened to his brother. And he wanted the Ragtags to come along to help. In exchange, he would take them to Darkon and, if they wished, introduce them to the crime lord Mordrin Slake, the man who could, maybe, tell them where they came from or what happened to them or both. Still, it could be neither, right? Or it could be a really underwhelming answer, you know? Or it could be a really terrible and horrific answer, but one that you can't really do anything about, like an answer with no actionable information to it, and all you can really do is go, ugh, or huh, or be quietly traumatized for the rest of your life. Makes you think that embracing chaos, like the snarky scrap had suggested, wasn't such bad advice after all. Still, passing up an opportunity like the one Answers was offering didn't make sense, right? So the Ragtags agreed to help the Tabaxi find his lost brother in exchange for a trip to Darkon and a meeting with the crime lord Mordrin Slake. At that, Priestess Cleana gifted the companions a series of disposable but potentially helpful magic items. And people say that elves are stodgy and stingy. In the cache, there were 3 healing potions. A shadowy crystal shard that would cast Pass Without Trace when broken. A stone with a fireball spell in it. And a coin that cast Haste or Slow when flipped. All very useful magics under the right, or wrong as it were, circumstances. Then, not leaving anything to chance, the priestess teleported the companions into the forest just outside town, where they could make their way to the widow's henge, hopefully away from dangerous eyes. The henge was about an hour outside Sylvania, and lay beyond increasingly harrowing Fey woodlands. Soon, in the overgrown woodlands, they came across the site. The henge was actually a twin henge, one made up of 30-foot-tall imposing crossed henge stones, and the second, inner one, of monolithic 12-foot-tall black stones, some of which had fallen over. Varys sent in his bat familiar to take a closer look. Strangely, on a stone in the inner ring, a splendorous feast could be seen. Approaching and assensing carefully, the heroes learned that there were several different types of magic at play here, including some enchantments and evocations. After letting the bat eat some of the feast, these magics were triggered and the entire circle caved into the earth, leaving a 30-foot-wide, 25-foot-deep hole in the ground. Seeing there was a tunnel leading off underground, the heroes lowered themselves down into the freshly uncovered cavern. The tunnel was about 10 feet across and went off into darkness. Cold wind blew from out of it, with an icy chill and snow grains tumbling into the cavern. Just then, the rubble from the cave-in began levitating and magically lifting back into place above their heads. Yeah, that's never a good sign, innit? It was at this point that everyone heard tiny little whispers, and soon discovered that they had invisible stalkers in the form of 2 pixies from the town's Garda. One, who introduced herself as Lilyspeck, was the same pixie Varys had spoken to the evening before. The other, Dimple Mist, mentioned that the 2 Garda had been following and listening in since the Ragtags left the trio life earlier in the morning. The duo were still on the hunt for that stolen book, and since they were now all down in the weird Fey hole together, the 2 pixies figured they could join up with everyone and find the book together. No one put up enough of a stink otherwise, so the pixies were soon an invisible part of the growing band of adventurers heading into the increasingly frigid caverns. Lilyspeck mentioned that the tunnel system seemed to be a Fey crossing. Fey crossings are naturally occurring portals between the Feywild and other planes. Often, the shift between the 2 planes is so subtle one doesn't even know they've passed into the Feywild until it's too late. Soon, Answers discovered something hidden at a fork in the tunnel. A necklace with a bell on it that belonged to Jewel. The Tabaxi was telling his brother he had been here. Buoyed on by this, the heroes continued ahead. With icy winds and snowy blasts of air surging through the system of tunnels, the way through to wherever they were headed was difficult to say the least. Suddenly, loud voices speaking in a form of goblin could be heard echoing from nearby tunnels. Using a comprehend languages spell, Unia could discern that a warband of hobgoblins were headed to check on the cave-in, and that meant everyone needed to get moving. Before moving out, Unia shattered the dark crystal shard, setting free shadowy stealth magic that surrounded everyone in a Pass Without Trace spell, silencing their footsteps, obscuring their movements, and erasing any tracks they left behind. Moving along the tunnels, with many of the group stumbling around blind in the almost total darkness, the heroes found the remains of several revelers from Sylvania who had been frozen solid or had their bodies shattered by extreme cold. Not having time to figure out what had happened, everyone continued on, hoping to leave the tunnels as soon as possible, and definitely before encountering any hostile goblin-y or other enemies. The heroes entered a large, icy chamber when suddenly a sleet storm harried them, causing some of the party to fall to the ground. As if that weren't bad enough, a huge cave-in of ice chunks fell from the ceiling, crushing everyone. Luckily, no one was hurt too bad, and they pushed on, seemingly having escaped whatever hobgoblins were hunting them. Finally, the adventurers came to a chamber that had a tunnel with light at the end of it. Scrambling to leave the underground Fey crossing, everyone pushed on and finally got outside for a look to where they had ended up. Stretching out for miles was a frigid, icy wasteland of tall, frozen shards and stretches of permafrost. Beyond that seemed to be a foreboding grey, dead waste of swamplands. And then, beyond all that, a wall of sickly smog and shadowy ruins. Oh, well, at least they're not stuck underground anymore, so that's something, right? No?